The 2010s were an interesting decade for me.
I mean, just in the past 10 years, I've graduated high school, went to college, dropped a ton of weight, became an RA, graduated college, spent a year job hopping while living on my parents' couch, gained all the way back, actually got a job I wanted, moved into my own apartment, and I spent the past 4 years trying to pay off student loans while dealing with car shit and re-losing the weight again. And between all of that, I started making YouTube videos, got contacts, bought 5 cars, and made many new friends. And a lot of memories that I'll never forget. Hell, I went to New York City 4 times. But I've also seen a lot of movies. Starting in 2011, I tried to see as many movies as I could from each year, and I've seen a lot of films that I loved. Some I probably would have checked out even before I became a movie buff, and some I never would have even heard of. So now that we're done with the decade, and I've already discussed all the shitty movies I had to sit through, now we can talk about the great ones. These are the movies I love the most, the ones I liked watching the most, the ones I can watch over and over again. So don't expect a bunch of Oscar movies, a lot of them are really good, but this is my list, and I prefer movies that entertain me first and foremost, more than how well made and acted they are. Now, if you've seen my year-end best list, a lot of them may get some repeating, although I'll try and add some new stuff where I can. And there will be some changes, movies will be higher or lower, and one that I put as my favorite film of the year isn't even on the list despite others from the same year that are. Some movies I watch again and either I like them more or they don't work as well on a second viewing. So we'll be doing 30 films, 10 for each video, 1 video a week for the rest of the month. But we also have plenty of honorable mentions. How those are gonna work is at the beginning of each video, I will go over the honorable mentions for certain years. So for the first video, we'll do the films from 2010 to 2013, next time we'll do 2014 to 2016, and then 2017 to 2019. Not every year was a fantastic year for movies, but all of them had some real standout gems that need some attention.
Oh, and for the songs I'm using under my commentary, I'm not using any songs that reach number 1 on Billboard, because I have a list that I'm doing next month covering those songs, and I don't want to spoil anything. So, let's begin. First up, my honorable mentions from 2010 to 2013.
Inception, an insanely creative, smart, and just fun movie that also has an often overlooked emotional heart to it. Tangled, one of the best Disney movies ever made, still looks beautiful 10 years later, great music, 2 lovable leads, and just a fun road trip adventure that makes me laugh and smile. The kids are alright, a really big surprise that is not only funny, but has a very likable family that I was interested in watching. Paranormal Activity 3, a horrifying film that uses the found footage well and creates some of the best suspense of the decade. Hugo, a sweet, fun adventure that just leaves you feeling nostalgic and has a love for classic cinema. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, a cartoonishly fun spy film with amazing set pieces, a fun story, and a really likable ensemble of characters. Source Code. I'm going to be doing a Nordy's Forgotten fix of this later this year, but if you haven't seen the movie yet, see it now. Wreck-It Ralph, a fun adventure story with a good friendship between 2 characters that would normally annoy me, and a ton of creativity. Argo. Thrilling, a great story, outstanding performances, a movie that just does everything right. Life of Pi. Emotionally impactful, phenomenal effects, and a story that shows how religion can truly help people through terrible situations. Iron Man 3. My favorite of the Iron Man series. I love Tony's arc, it has some heart-racing action scenes, and is also one of the funniest MCU movies. Saving Mr. Banks. I gave this a full review, so check that out, but besides 2 great performances from Tom Hanks and Emma Thompson, it is so nice. It's just a nice movie to watch. VHS 2, a balls-to-the-wall, insanely bloody horror film that is structured so well, and every segment is great. Captain Phillips, insanely shot with Tom Hanks giving one of his best performances. And finally, The Conjuring. Yes, this was my number 1 of my favorite movies of 2013 list, but isn't even on this list. Still a very scary movie with great characters, there are just movies that did it even better.
And now we can finally start the list. We're counting down.
Love is an open door.
My top 30 favorite movies of the 2010s. Number 30.
So because of the time I'm filming this, there are still some movies from 2019 that have gotten great reviews that I haven't seen yet. 1917, Uncut Gems, Dark Waters, Little Women. So by the time I get all these videos out, this might have been kicked off the list.
Hey, Benny, you want to ask this guy some questions?
Hi, what is this? What's this arrangement?
Mr. Drysdale.
CSI KFC?
I just talked about this a couple weeks ago, so I'll try and keep it brief. Knives Out is just a really good mystery that manages to subvert all the cliches of your average whodunit. From making the main character not be the detective or any members of the family, but the nurse, to seemingly giving up the killer halfway through. Daniel Craig as the detective is hilarious, the family is wonderfully hateable, and I really like the main character. She was just a nice person who had legit flaws, but really wanted to do what was right, and having it so she can't lie is a good plot device. Every single line of dialogue is important. Something you think was just a throwaway line early on will become relevant in the last act. It's funny, thrilling, and it looks great. While I didn't care much for the out-of-nowhere political stuff like the family fighting about an immigrant or the one kid being an alt-right troll, it's still a great movie that knows how to play against your expectations in a fun way without feeling pretentious. And that's all I got. Want more? Check out my favorite movies of 2019 video. Number 29.
Remember when this was the movie film Twitter was gushing over?
This movie is probably the closest we've come to recreating an 80s action movie. Others have been set in the 80s and have been great, but just the aesthetic of this movie feels like something that would have come out in like 1984. It just looks so much different from every other movie that came out the last 10 years. The action is enthralling and there's a lot of it. You could say this movie is one long chase scene. Hell, when you really look at it, the plot is them running away and then coming back. But it's done so well that you don't notice. They managed to convey so much information without dialogue, from Max's past regrets to why the wives want so desperately to leave. Whether it be through the subtle acting, the camera, the editing, it shows the exposition doesn't need to be said. I like these characters. Max is sympathetic, Furiosa's a badass, and Joe is fucking horrifying. And I love that he's basically personification of toxic masculinity. Looking back, it's amazing how progressive this movie is. As much as I hate to say it, the MRAs were right. This is feminist propaganda. And I don't want to go into details here. If you want to find out more, check out the Bringing Back What's Stolen series from Innuendo Studios.
AKA one of the few lefty YouTubers who can make media analysis and not come across like a pretentious asshole who thinks their opinion is objectively correct.
The effects work is great with a mix of both practical and CG, and throughout the whole thing I was breathing so hard I nearly hyperventilated. It may not be the second coming of Christ that everyone made it seem like back in 2015, but it's still a damn great film. Number 28.
Activate drop lines! Remember!
Some of you may not remember this movie. It did decent at the box office and critics loved it, but it doesn't get brought up much anymore. I love time loop stories. Groundhog Day, Source Code, the Happy Death Day movies, Sunset's Backstage Pass, all classics. Edge of Tomorrow mixes the idea of reliving the same day over and over again, but also brings it into the world of a science fiction war movie.
A concept that just screams, this is based on a manga, isn't it? And sure enough it was. Sure wish I knew that before I did my favorite films of 2014 and said it was completely original.
Tom Cruise is great as always. Maybe it's my mom's influence, but I can't think of a single action movie where he is bad. Even in that crappy Mummy remake, he was good. Emily Blunt is awesome, the late great Bill Paxton is wonderful, and all the supporting characters are funny and interesting. It reminded me of Aliens, a group of Marines that smack talk each other and treat going up to space invaders like a game. The action scenes are fantastic, it feels like a war movie. The battle on the beach feels like Saving Private Ryan. Even when they're on the airship, it seems like something that you would see in a World War II movie. They're shot great, the editing is great, it allows us to see the expressions on the actors' faces so we feel their emotions. The music is thrilling, and I was really scared of these aliens. They have a unique design and move so quick that the idea of one coming towards me just freaks me out. And I love how they use the time loop premise. They actually get some really good laughs out of it. Seeing Cruise die over and over again to the point where he just starts to get more annoyed is really funny. funny. This is just a great summer blockbuster, one that just gives you a fun ride while having enough to come back to. I had forgotten how good it was, and if you haven't seen it yet, give it a watch. It's one of the most underrated movies of the decade. Number 27.
I already covered this in Nordy's Forgotten Flicks, so it'll probably be very brief.
You probably never saw this little movie from 2010, and that's why I gave it a review. But this is a movie that has a very simple idea and does everything it can with that idea. A man wakes up in a coffin buried a few feet underground, armed with a phone and some lights that are running low on batteries. The entire movie takes place in this one coffin for the entire 90 minutes. Anything we see from the outside is just video sent to him on the phone. It's like Speed, it's just a brilliant film based on such a simple idea. Wonderfully directed, it gives you just enough information to keep you invested without dragging it down in unnecessary details. It manages to get so much out of such a small space, and every time something bad happens, from a snake to a part of the coffin breaking, it makes my adrenaline pump. Ryan Reynolds is fantastic as the lead Paul Conroy, probably the best performance of his career, and I'm including Deadpool. I just felt so bad for this guy when he is saying goodbye to his mom. It is heartbreaking. And then there's the ending. An ending that not only nearly gave me a heart attack, but left me sitting through the credits in stunned silence. So yes, if you haven't seen Buried after I viewed it a couple years ago, please give it a watch. It's my personal pick for most overlooked movie of the decade. Number 26.
Unlike that worst movies of the year video I did, movies that won Best Picture actually can make it onto this list. Only one did.
The creek is plenty deep enough to sail, even with a boat full of load. The distance from the work area to the point on the latter bayou is several miles by water, fewer than land. It occurs to me that the expense of transportation would be materially diminished.
Materially diminished?
If we use the waterway.
Are you an engineer or a nigger?
Damn, this movie is... it's heavy. Like, I try to keep things light on here, even when I'm dealing with serious subject or literally pouring my frustrations out. But, yeah, there's not too much comedy to be found here. This movie follows the tale of Solomon Northup, who, while born into freedom, was captured and sold into slavery and forced to be one for 12 years. And this doesn't really hold any punches on how bad slavery was. We see whippings, we see hangings, we see fucking slave rape. There are scenes in this that are so hard to watch I legit had to look away from the screen. The fact that it's so well acted too makes it even worse. You feel the pain these people are going through. The production design is fantastic. It feels like we're just really looking at a bunch of people in the mid-1800s. But one thing I really have to give it credit for is how much I fucking hated some of these racists. You'd think it wouldn't take much to make me hate slave owners, but they went above and beyond and make me want to see some of them get their brains smashed in. Throughout the whole movie, I was begging it to be over, but in a good way, because I wanted him to get out of this situation. I wanted him to see his family again, even if at points I forgot he had a family. This is a great movie, and one I think is going to be shown in schools in the future.
So, stay tuned for my full review in March. God damn, this movie's depressing.
Number 25.
And we're just gonna put these two together.
That lightsaber. It belongs to me. Come get it.
And...
Ah yes, the two Abrams Star Wars movies that everyone loves so much. We'll start with Force Awakens. This movie actually managed to surprise me. I was looking forward to it, but I couldn't hype myself up for it as much as I wanted to. It's just so hard these days. I mean, every fucking person has to have an opinion, and if you love a movie, there's 1,000 people at the ready to tell you why you're wrong, and then there's 1,000 more people to tell them why they're wrong. It's a fucking mess. I love Force Awakens because it made me happy. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This came out at a very, very bad time in my life. I was fucking miserable. And so when I sat down to watch this, I just wanted an escape, and I got one. Was it very similar to A New Hope? Yeah, and I thought that at the time, but it was still done well, and I like these characters. I love Rey, I love Poe, I love Finn. They were fun and interesting and likable. Mix that with great action, special effects, and some gorgeous cinematography. This movie just made me happy at a time when I really, really needed a pick-me-up. And now, Rise of Skywalker, the favorite Star Wars movie of no one. I just went on a long rant in my favorite movies of 2019 video. This movie gave me an adventure with 3 characters that I had grown to love, with some good comedy, fun action, and some gripping character arcs. Was the first act incredibly clumsy? Yes. Was it obvious they had to shoehorn in a lot and contrive story beats after Last Jedi diverted from the path Abrams probably planned? Oh yeah. Did everything work? Not at all. But the stuff that mattered to me did. Rey's arc, Kylo's arc, the emotional climax, that's the stuff I was interested in and that it delivered on.
It's clumsy and doesn't always make sense, but in the end, it was a fun ride and gave me some stuff that I really loved. And in the end, doesn't that sum up the 2010s in a nutshell?
Love is an open door. With you. With you. With you. With you. Love is an open
Number 24.
I was continuously switching between this and Tangled as to what was my favorite Disney animated, non-Pixar movie of the 2010s Disney revival era. And in the end, I picked...
Hi! Hello? It's me again.
Hey, it's Officer Toot Toot.
No, actually it's Officer Hops, and I'm here to ask you some questions about a case.
What happened, Meter Maid? Did someone steal a traffic cone? It wasn't me.
This is one of the most rewatchable movies I've ever seen. Every time I watch it, I notice something new. The attention to detail is just unbelievable. This has some of the best plotting and world building I have ever seen in an animated movie. I also love the 2 main characters. Judy is determined, optimistic, and smart, while Nick is funny, cunning, and street smart. They work well off each other, the 2 voice actors do great, and they were so good that I want to see more of them. The animation is stunning, the lighting is great, the designs are great, but it also has a bit of a cartoony style, so the characters can be expressive and fun. It's really funny with a variety of humor, and they almost all hit, even the stupid puns. The action is thrilling, the mystery is compelling, and I love the music. But of course the aspect that makes it stand out is that it's a movie about prejudice. But it does it in a clever way. It's not like they just make it so the predators are a metaphor for black people, hi bright. They work it into the world. Judy is stereotyped because she's a small bunny, Nick is stereotyped for being a fox, and by the end, it's not like they completely solve all the prejudice and racism because you can't fix that overnight, but they all try to be better, and I think that's a great message, especially in today's political climate. Zootopia is one of the best animated films I've ever seen, and one of the best Disney movies ever made.
Love is an open door. With you. With you. With you. With you. Love is an open
Number 23.
This movie got so hyped so fast that I'm surprised it didn't get a massive backlash.
This place is pretentious.
I mean, it's been over a year and people are still talking about it. And that's great because it's a great movie. I can't tell you much about the Spider-Man comics with Miles Morales. I could barely tell you about the ones with Peter Parker, but I know pretty much nothing about this guy. So I have no idea how well this connects to the comics, but I loved Miles' arc in the film. He's just interesting and it's nice to have a different kind of Spider-Man. He has a family, he's still intelligent and a little awkward, but has a more rebellious side, and the drama between him and his family is kind of heartbreaking at points. Peter Parker is not only funny, but I love the whole reluctant mentor character type that's just kind of winging it. Miles and Gwen Stacy have great chemistry, and she's a badass. Spider-Man Noir, Peter Porker, and Penny Parker are all hilarious. And of course, Lily Tomlin as Aunt May is one of the best casting decisions I have ever seen. The direction and editing are great, the timing is perfect on so many of the jokes and even the exposition. And then of course there's the animation, which is probably some of the most unique I have ever seen. Don't get me wrong, I love a lot of animated movies, but most of them seem like they're trying to look like Disney and Pixar. This looks different, and it's creative and fits with the comic book style it's going for. The colors, the effects, it all looks beautiful. The action scenes, while a few times get a little too cluttered, most of the time they were enthralling. Even the music, which is mostly made up of genres I'm not a fan of, they sounded great. I don't know if I'd say it revolutionizes animation. I mean, I kind of don't want it to. I kind of like that it's a one of a kind and don't want imitators to come along. Best Spider-Man movie? Maybe, but definitely best Spider-Man movie of the 2010s. And it's not like there wasn't any competition.
Into my heart instead of my head. You found another one, but I am the better one. I won't let you forget me. Love is an open door. With you. With you. With you. With you. Love is an open.
Number 22.
It's crooked. Forgive me.
I love M. Night, but even I'll admit he started out the decade on a very low point. Say what you will about The Happening or Lady in the Water, there was a passion to them. Last Airbender and After Earth feel like studio movies. Then in 2015 he came back with The Visit, his best film in years, and then followed it up with Split, which was even better. I remember the day I first saw this. It was the same day Trump was inaugurated, and so I decided to go see a movie where a madman kidnapped 3 teenage girls. Seemed less depressing. And not only did this movie actually get so intense that it made my legs shake, but it ended up being Shyamalan's best film since Signs. James McAvoy's performance is not only the best he has ever given, but I'm still pissed he wasn't nominated for an Oscar. He is so good at playing all these different personalities. He not only acts well by giving them all different vocal inflections, but just the way he walks and moves his body. You can tell when he's switched. The rest of the cast does a good job too, from Anna Taylor-Joy as Casey to Betty Buckley as Fletcher. It's one of the best directed films M. Night has done. It's dark, confining, and just drips with suspense. They keep talking about the beast and how it's coming. I just remember that image that Hedwig made showing what the beast looked like, and it's scarier than any effect could conjure up.
And then of course, there's the final twist. Look, the movie's been out for 3 years, and glass is a thing, so I am gonna spoil the ending, but if you really don't want to know, go here.
When I heard that Unbreakable score and realized that it was set in the same universe, I legit put my hands to my mouth and gasped. It blew my mind and actually made several parts of the climax make sense. This movie is amazing. I haven't even mentioned the score yet. The only nitpick I really have is that the other 2 girls seemed mostly pointless. This is one of M. Night's best, I love it, and if you haven't seen it yet, turn out the lights and give it a watch. Number 21.
Oh, shit! Wait, that's great! Oh, that is crazy! Oh my god! Holy shit!
The very first review I ever did for YouTube, and 5 years later would give a full video. And 8 years after it came out, it's still one of the best found footage movies ever made. Not just because the movie is good, but because of how it utilizes the found footage gimmick. The 3 boys use their powers to move the camera all around, they can get angles you normally wouldn't with a consumer camera, and they use so many different types of cameras from cell phones to police dash cam. And it's all edited so well. The special effects are also great for such a low budget movie. When they're flying around, some of it looks like green screen, but a lot of it actually is pretty convincing, and the effects and camera work are able to create some very creative action scenes. The 3 main characters are all fun and have great chemistry. I just love watching them, and they do what most people would do if they got superpowers. Use it to become popular and fuck with people. Granted, a lot of the female characters are just boring blank slates,
Which makes almost too much sense now.
like Casey, who is solely there to put in another camera, but Andrew's character arc more than makes up for it. This poor kid is just so sympathetic. His dad's an asshole, his mom is dying, his school life is hell, and his cousin seems to only hang out with him out of pity. I understand why he went down the path he did. This is a great supervillain origin story, and a lot of it is thanks to Dane DeHaan's perfect performance. Movies like this get my creative juices flowing. Every time I watch it, I feel inspired to create my own stories again. I'm still up for a sequel, even if they need a new writer, because there's so much creativity, imagination, and love in this film that it remains one of my favorite superhero movies of all time.
And that ends part 1. Join me next week for part 2. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.
You don't know